Namaskar and thank you for tuning into the Economic Brief. You'll be briefed on key business stories as seen from India, about India and the world. Let's begin on the show today. The Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw hails the Indian Railways for developing the world's most powerful hydrogen-fueled train engine. As the US prepares for Trump, markets and global trade adjust to different levels of expectation on the economy, stupid. Why is there an urge to push workers? We'll weigh in as well on the work-life balance. The LA wildfires' property damage is estimated to be over $250 billion. Before we move on, let's listen to India's Minister for Railways talking about the new hydrogen fuel engine that's going to be a game changer for the railways. Hydrogen is efficient, it's versatile and has low emissions. Let's listen to what he said.
बहुत अच्छी प्रोग्रेस है। हाइड्रोजन ट्रेन अपने आप में एक बहुत ही कॉम्प्लेक्स टेक्नोलॉजी है और दुनिया की सबसे पावरफुल हाइड्रोजन ट्रेन 1200 हॉर्स पावर की वो बनाने का प्रकल्प हाथ में लिया है। कंप्लीट डिजाइन होके उसका जो सिस्टम्स की पावर ट्रेन की जो कंप्लीट डिजाइन है उसका सिस्टम इंटीग्रेशन अभी चल रहा है। बहुत जल्दी पटरी पे आएगी वो।
So let's try and understand about hydrogen fuel trains. There are very few countries in the world that have developed this technology, and India has developed now the most powerful engine, a hydrogen fuel engine of 1,200 horsepower. Coming up behind me are some details. It's the most powerful such engine in the world. That's what the Railway Minister has said. It uses indigenous technology, so that's good for our railways. We've been developing our own technology. It's good for Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, and it's soon to be tested on the Jind-Sonipat route in Haryana. So we're going to see this train work out and we'll know after that how it's going to help. Hydrogen is a very fuel efficient kind of fuel because first of all it's part of the green fuels that the world is going to be moving to, and it can be easily manufactured. India has a big hydrogen mission. India is planning to produce about 5 million tons of green hydrogen, utilized in many ways, even exported over time. So, and we are also hoping to have about 35 such trains in the near capacity. We know the capacity of this engine is 1,200 horsepower. It's quite a powerful engine, and others have capacities only of about 500 to 600 horsepower. So India is almost double of that, clearly double of that. Only Germany, France, Sweden and China have manufactured such engines in the past. So India is the fifth country to do so. But before we bring you our next, before we bring in our guest into this program, let's try and understand what the railways is doing. Especially in colder climates, the railways has advanced a great deal. The Vande Bharat trains, for instance, are now moving into the Himalayan areas, into Kashmir. Let's see what kind of trains they have. Let's listen to the Chief Engineer of the Northern Railways.
It is like other Vande Bharat trains only, with some additional features that enable it to operate in that extreme cold weathers. It is having heating for the water tanks, the complete pipelines, then the saloon area, then the windshield. So all the critical equipments, all the critical items provided in this train are specifically designed for operation in extreme cold weather.
And we are privileged to have with us Ms. Jaya Varma Sinha. She's the former chairperson of the Railway Board. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us. When we look at 1,200 horsepower engine of hydrogen, why is this going to be a game changer, and how is it going to be a game changer for the Indian Railways?
See, first of all, as you have already learned, that this is the one of the most powerful engines, hydrogen-powered engines in the world. So all over, there are 4 countries which have already mastered this technology, And but India has gone a stage ahead, and whereas the horsepower which is available in the rest of the world is roughly around 500 to 700 horsepower per engine, per power car, we are aiming to get 1200. And it will also make this train the longest train in the world, which runs on hydrogen, green hydrogen. So we will be having 10 coaches.
I see. That's wonderful. So we are planning to have about 35 these kind of trains in the near future. And by 2030, India has this, at least the Indian Railways has a net zero target. So how does this help in doing that, helping us reach that target?
As you are aware, green hydrogen is the greenest fuel that we have, because it has no greenhouse gas emission, and the only byproduct of this fuel is water vapor. So there can be nothing which is greener and better than using green hydrogen. Of course, it has technological challenges, and that is why it is taking so long for the world to also adapt to it. And that is why India is hoping to be a pioneer in this field by developing an engine which is so powerful that it will be not only be useful for the railways, but it will be used for various other machines and even tugs in the ports, etc. Right. So that you enable the country to move towards a greener fuel economy.
So are there any changes necessary in the existing infrastructure to accommodate this kind of hydrogen fuel?
The biggest investment is in the static infrastructure, which is required for generating this hydrogen and storing this hydrogen. And since hydrogen is a very combustible and inflammable product, you have to ensure that it is very safely maintained and kept, stored, and as well as when you are doing the fueling, then you have to ensure all the safety norms. So the PSB, which controls the safety requirements for this, the Petroleum Ministry Board, they have cleared the infrastructure which is there in Jind, which is being prepared in Jind, and so that it is safe from every aspect.
Right.
So producing hydrogen, storing it, that is the infrastructure challenge.
So these trains will be able to run on the current tracks itself,
Yes.
Is there any concern about, let's say, we've already now started moving Vande Bharat trains into the cold climates. We've seen that there's been adjustments made to those trains. Will these kind of trains be able to run there?
These trains will be able to run there, provided they have the same features which the Vande Bharat, which has been modified for running in cold climate, is there in these trains as well. As far as the fuel is concerned, there will be no concern.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ms. Jaya Varma Sinha, former chairperson of the Railway Board. Thank you for joining us on this subject. Moving on to our next story then, a Trump second term in the White House is being anticipated in different ways by different groups. Many countries are hoping to leverage the China card to get a better deal from the man who wrote the art of the deal. But Trump's openness to weaponize trade and tariffs has the potential to disrupt supply chains and also add to the economic uncertainty that has dogged the world economy, in fact, since the post-COVID recovery. Here's our report.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
That was January 20, 2017. 8 years later, the world is multipolar, with emerging countries playing a greater role and the gap between the global north and south narrowing. In his second term, Trump plans to impose sweeping tariffs on imported goods and specific companies and countries. How does Mexico view this threat?
I'm convinced that the US-Mexico-Canada Treaty, this is important for the next President of the United States, President Trump, because this trade treaty is the only way to successfully face the economic and commercial competition with China.
Clearly, China's rise concerns the US, and other countries are leveraging this. China's dominance in global trade is a caution for the United States, and Chinese authorities believe it will continue.
Last year, the total value of imports and exports reached 43.85 trillion yuan. an increase of 5% year on year, setting a new historical record. China's position as the world's largest goods trading nation has become even more secure.
The US supports Taiwan's democratic interests while adhering to the One China policy. Taiwan's semiconductor industry is key to global supply chains, helping US companies stay competitive in technology and innovation.
Taiwan is confident that it will continue to deepen cooperation with the new government to resist authoritarian expansion and create prosperity and development for both countries while making more contribution to regional stability and peace.
Back in the US, Trump has pledged to end taxes on tips and overtime, to lower corporate tax rates, and to open federal lands to foreign companies and housing. He has also vowed to undo much of Biden's climate change work. But it is his use of tariffs as a key foreign policy tool that is disrupting markets.
Trump posted on Truth Social that he's going to create an external revenue service. That's going to be focused on collecting tariffs and really clamping down on companies that are selling into the U.S. From abroad. This really could be a problem for many investors, as tariffs will obviously push up the price of goods. There also could be retaliation from other countries. And so this is one of the reasons you've seen a lot of volatility in the markets.
While the US welcomes in a new administration, Trump's tariff threats could lead to supply chain disruptions, increased costs, economic uncertainty, and potential trade wars. The Economic Brief.
And joining us is Dr. Rajat Kathuria, Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences and Professor of Economics at Shiv Nadar University. Thank you very much, Professor Kathuria. Now, this is Trump's second term. He's been around for 8 years. Why is he being seen as unpredictable?
Well, because I think he's been seen unpredictable because he's made statements which are, I guess, not possible to implement in the near term. He says he's going to impose tariffs on China to the tune of 60%. He's going to impose tariffs on India to the tune of 20%. And like you said in your program, like one of the commentators said on the program, is that the moment you begin to impose such high tariffs, it's going to have a negative and adverse impact on the US economy itself. Remember, trade, you engage in trade because somebody else is better at doing something. And therefore, the benefits come to your country. And if you're trying to sort of damage those benefits, then it will result in something adverse within the economy. It could be inflation, it could be supply chain disruptions, and it could be, increased consumer spending. So there will be an impact on the Indian economy. And I think the American Treasury and the economic advisors recognize that these are going to be the implications of the campaign rhetoric, if I were to call it, on the American economy. And therefore, I think sometimes there will be, some of the policies might be implemented, but if the US goes the whole hog, I think it's not going to be sort of in their own interest to do so. So the uncertainty mark is how much of the rhetoric of Trump during the campaign is going to be implemented.
Indeed.
I think that's the uncertainty.
Now, India is the most natural counterbalance to China's influence in the region. It's been there for a long time. But to what extent are other countries, even those nowhere close geographically to China, willing to play this China card to get close to the US?
So I think, we haven't been here for the first time. This is probably the third or the fourth time that India has been held up as an exemplar or possibly another alternative destination other than China to house investments, to become a part of global value chains, etc. But India hasn't stepped up to the plate in some sense to be able to play that role, despite the fact that we have a very large market, we have very large scale that we can offer, just like China offers, but we haven't really stepped up to be able to occupy the position that China once occupied or continues to occupy, as you said in the program, of being the world's biggest exporter of goods. And now reaching, even as we speak, yesterday, there was a news report that China had reached a trade surplus of $1 trillion. That is enormous. which means that it is exporting and it is probably the largest trading partner for over 100 countries in the world today. To therefore try and sort of change that supply chain is going to require more than United States. It's going to require more than India as an alternative destination. A lot of countries will have to come together. So I think the answer there, Mark, is if supply chains have to be relocated and whether countries are ready to play that role, they have to contend with the fact that China has sort of entrenched in final and intermediate good exports to over 100 countries, as I said, as the largest trading partner, and it's very efficient. Countries trade with China because it's competitive and the pricing makes sense for them. To be able to shift to alternative destinations will not only be a time-consuming process, but it could potentially also be a disruptive process. One will have to go carefully how we tread there. But the good news is that countries are beginning to come together, are wanting to come together to try and diversify, because putting all your eggs in one basket is not such a good idea. And with China, a lot of countries have actually put their eggs in the Chinese basket. So diversification is a good idea, but I think it'll still take time.
True, and we are seeing the emergence of a strong multipolar world as a result. Now, but Professor Katuria, Howard Lutnick is going to be the Commerce Secretary for Donald Trump, and he's a billionaire. And they have so many billionaires in positions of power, this administration. One would expect business to thrive. Is that a logical conclusion, or is it even a true conclusion?
So I don't know whether one can draw a correlation between how a businessman is going to behave when he becomes the Commerce Secretary. But you remind me, Mark, of a wonderful article that a Nobel laureate wrote many, many years ago in an academic journal called Foreign Policy. And this academic was none other than Paul Krugman, who used to be one of the economic advisors, or supposed to be potential economic advisor in the Clinton administration. And he wrote a wonderful article exactly sort of trying to explain the point that you're making, or trying to provide an alternative, which says that somebody who's very good at running a company may not be the ideal person to run a country's economic apparatus. And likewise, somebody who's very good at running or being the chief economic advisor will not be the best person to be able to run a company successfully. So sometimes the skills that are needed for running a country, because a country is a system which engages not only within itself, but with the outside world. And it becomes a sort of a general, because I'll give you one example. A lot of people say that depreciating the rupee or the devaluation of the rupee would be good for exports. Yes, it would be good for exports, but it would also increase the cost of your imports. So therefore, you have to balance. Whoever is in power or whoever is taking those decisions will have to balance the sort of positives and the negatives and then arrive at a decision. And sometimes, people with the larger view are better placed to take that decision for the country as a whole.
Okay, we leave with that. We leave with that. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajat Katuria. Thank you for joining us here on the Economic Brief and enlightening us on what to expect from the Trump administration.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, moving on to our next story, at a time when growth rates matter and competitiveness demands a little extra, organizations have been looking to push workers the extra mile. But how much is too much? What's the best approach, carrot or stick? And then there are awards, and are they equitably distributed? Do the heavy lifters get enough incentive to stare at the management? Here's Anu Kaushik's report.
In today's world, technology has penetrated into every aspect of our lives. It has made things convenient, but it also has downsides. Round-the-clock connectivity has created an expectation that you will be available even beyond office hours. But there's also a growing demand for work-life balance. Yet some top bosses want employees to work overtime. The latest to demand so is L&T chairman S.N. Subramanian, who has sparked a row after calling for a 90-hour work week.
I regret I'm not able to make you work on Sundays. How long can you stare at your wife?
Let's tell you the work hours per week in the world's top 5 economies, including India. According to the International Labour Organization, in US, the average work hours per week is 39. In China, it's 46.1. In Germany and Japan, the number stands at 34.2 and 36.6 respectively. In India, it's 46.7. Unsurprisingly, the L&T chairman's remarks have enraged Indians.
I do not agree to go every single day of a week to office to stare my manager's face. Come on, my husband's face is more prettier than my manager's face.
How can you be productive if you're not taking time out for yourself?
When you are passionate about your work, then this art does not matter at all. But if we so-called put them in structure way that, okay, 7 days a week or 6 days a week you need to work, I think sometimes it hampers your true potential.
A work-life balance ensures that one gets to follow their interests without compromising on their careers. Take, for example, this Polish tourist in New Delhi.
I managed to work 40 hours per week and have a life afterwards. I keep some hobbies.
According to the ILO, 51% of Indians work at least 49 hours a week, second only to Bhutan, where the number stands at 61%. As per a survey by global job listing platform Indeed, 90% of Indian employees surveyed were contacted by their employers outside of working hours. 85% of them were contacted even when they were on a sick leave, while 79% said that they feared that their careers could be impacted if they failed to respond to such calls. Notably, India's labour laws cap working hours at 48 hours per week. Overworking not only affects employees' productivity but also takes a toll on their health in the form of heart-related issues, anxiety and fatigue. In the hustle culture, we have been told to put in extra hours, but now people are questioning its impact on their physical, mental and social well-being. With this, the responsibility to foster work-life balance has increased on companies. With camera person Mohit Joshi, this is Anu Kaushik reporting for the Economic Brief DD India.
Well, the wildfires in Los Angeles, they've damaged a lot of California. The outgoing US President Joe Biden said that tens of billions of dollars will be needed to restore the City of Angels to its pre-wildfire state. And economists say that the devastating fires are likely to put modest pressure on the national economy in the near term, but are likely to derail a strong forward momentum despite losses of around 250 billion US dollars. We leave you with Diptanshu Kashyap's report. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.
The ongoing wildfires in the US state of California, majorly in the Los Angeles area, have caused devastating losses in both life and property. Beginning on January 7th, the disaster has claimed about 24 lives so far. Over 12,000 structures have been destroyed and nearly 92,000 people remain under evacuation orders in Los Angeles alone. According to private forecaster AccuWeather, total damage and economic losses are estimated around $250 billion to $275 billion. This makes the wildfires the costliest natural disaster in US history, surpassing Hurricane Katrina in 2005.
This is most likely the largest insured wildfire loss in U.S. history. We're seeing estimates right now ranging from $20 billion to $30 billion in insured covered losses.
US President Joe Biden has announced that tens of billions of dollars will be required to restore the City of Angels.
Although the federal government is going to cover 100% of the cost for the next 180 days for things like firefighter overtime pay, debris removal, temporary shelters, it's going to cost tens of billions of dollars to get Los Angeles back to where it was. So we're going to need Congress to step up to provide funding to get this done. And we're going to get that done, God willing.
As President Biden addressed the rebuilding costs, asset management firms in the region overseeing $4 trillion in assets are also feeling the strain. Many are relocating offices and supporting staff who have lost their homes. This disruption comes amid rising US Treasury yields, raising concerns about high interest rates and fiscal challenges. Insurers are anticipating historic losses as large commercial banks have announced plans to ease mortgage repayment conditions for those affected. Federal and state regulators have pledged to assist affected financial institutions. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.